Good evening, Sam here. Got Ian's Rocket Special Hot Output Humbuckers. Now you can see that this is sort of underway, and I didn't intend to do this. I intended to bring this up and show you a guitar in sort of very typical, I guess, tired and needing setting up condition. It was a really good example for that. So, but I needed to charge all my phones and whatnot, so I thought I'll do the painstaking bit, which is making the nut first, which I've obviously got stuck into doing that, and I've been doing that for the last while. And then the string's broken, so I'm going to have to put some new strings on anyway, just to do the setup, so it's a bit annoying. But I wanted to introduce you to this guitar. I'll just get my diary, my workbook notes, because it has a couple of observations in here that are useful to refer back to, for me anyway. So the thing about this here guitar is, first of all, it's what some people would consider a budget, no-name-ish guitar. I think they were produced by the Marshall, the amplifier people, for some sort of promotional thing, but I'm not quite sure. But anyway, you can see it's a Strat style guitar. Nothing wrong with it. It's got a nice shape, nice thickness to it. The neck seems pretty nice wood. It has a tilt back headstock, which is a bit unusual in a Strat style guitar, and consequently the original nut that I've taken off was somewhere here. It's gone. But it was terrible. It was grabbing at the strings, putting the whole thing completely out of tune. So that had to go, and I've got a custom block, or a blank tusk block that I've shaped to replace it, because there was no direct replacement of tusk that I could get within time. So I got a blank and did it from that. So that takes about an hour to do, believe it or not. So I've done that off camera while I've been charging the batteries. But so the thing about this guitar, it has everything going against it. So I think it's like it's got it all going wrong as opposed to all going on. What's going wrong? Well, in priority order for me, it won't stay in tune. So the first thing, it's pretty filthy, but the nut was gripping the strings like nobody's business. So nothing would stay in tune. The tremolo is also kind of locked down. The first fret action was way high, so that wouldn't stay in tune. So the nut not only had friction and was grabbing the strings, but also you'd get the notes playing sharp when you're fretting down here, which is not helping the sense of being in tune. So that was the first and most important thing. So if there's one thing that's going to put you off, or certainly put me off playing the guitar, and I would suspect putting Ian off playing, who owns the guitar and who's coming back to playing the guitar after a long while, perhaps not playing it, and you want something that's not going to fight you. So now the thing I want you to understand is that everything I'm saying here is, you'll find all of these faults and problems on much more expensive guitars. So that's the amazing thing. When you see more than a few of these, if you've done a few setups of different types of guitar, you'll realize that there's nothing about spending 1,500 quid on a Gibson that will get you one with a nut that stays in tune. It's absolutely not at all likely. So there's all manner of expensive guitars which will have all of these problems. So first of all, it won't stay in tune, which is going to put anyone off bothering to try and play it. Second thing, it was impossible to play. The neck relief was too great. The action at this end was way too high. I did consider shimming the neck, but that's a sort of last step. This, I've got the action I want, or I got the action I want by dropping all the saddles. You can see how grubby they are, but they stick up a bit, but that's okay. Better to have, I don't want to put a shim in if I can get to where I need to get to with the saddle. So I've corrected that, and then as a result, having got that low action at the other end, I'm fine-tuning the action at this end. So I've done the relief, the last fret action, or the bridge action, and then fine-tuned the slots on here to give me the perfect first fret action over here. So that's great. That's going to make it easy to play. But I suspect when I put some more sacrificial strings on here to test play it, or to do the fret leveling, I'm almost certain that it'll probably have some chokes and buzzes, which I will cure by doing precision fret leveling. So we can take care of all of that. But again, nothing that you wouldn't find on any number of expensive guitars. And we've also got a problem with the electrics being crackly and intermittent. So I think we might look at either totally spraying out and operating the switch. It's solid enough. There technically should be no reason why it doesn't work, but everything's crackly and I think there's some movement everywhere. So we'll check all the electrics. We'll take the plate and tip it out and see what we've got. And then on top of that, once we've taken care of that, it's dirty and tired looking. So we'll give it all a complete thorough clean up. We'll leave the numbers on here for Ian's practicing and knowing where he is. But we'll clean around all of that, and then we'll clean the fingerboard up and get it looking and feeling nice and fresh. And then the other thing I found is we've got some sort of slightly crunchy tuners at this end, but they're also loose, so we can tighten them up and see if there's any improvements we can make. I do have some replacement tuners which may or may not be suitable, but I will only do that if it's what's the word, showstopper. So like I said, I didn't really get a chance to show you how kind of bad it was playing I intended to make the nut and then put the original nut back on and then sort of take it as if I'd just come across it, but it's taken such a while to get this done. That's not going to be possible. So let's carry on from where we are. So I do have to find a set of strings that will work on this. I think everything I've got here has been through or been on short scale guitars. I don't think any of these strings here, possibly this one, maybe, I'm not sure any of them suits a Strat with a tremolo block. Otherwise I'll have to just use a new set of strings, which is a bit disappointing because it's a sort of an expensive waste of some strings. So let's see if we can get anywhere close to it. I don't think we can. Maybe let's see. Let's be realistic. What have we actually got? We've got a broken B string. Let us see if we can just replace one string for the time being. We'll find out fairly soon if it doesn't work. Okay. Yeah, but it is. It's a very good example of a typical guitar that is. If you came across it, you might be disappointed and think, "Oh God, this is horrible to play." But one of the first things I learned in doing setups was, don't be fooled. Almost any budgety, unprepossessing, what's the word I'm looking for? Unremarkable guitar can be made to play really well, and this is a perfectly good example of that. It's actually a very, dreary. Right, I'm going to have to poke the string through with a poking thing. Yeah, it's not a very exciting kind of looking guitar in its current condition, but actually there's nothing wrong with it, and I even sort of quite like the pickups. Tone was pretty good, so nothing wrong with them either. So let's see if I can save myself a bit of hassle by running this spare string somewhere through here. Any chance of coming through where I want it to come through? Oh my God. What are we looking for? We're looking for the B, aren't we? Thank you. I'm not totally. Oh yeah, just maybe. Let's see if we can get it on. Get it on. This is really rusted and dead. Sorry about this. Not very good views at the moment. So in my way of doing things, I would do the nut first, as you can see. That's what I started off with. Once I've got the nut right, I would then go ahead and set the action to where I wanted it. And once I got the action where I wanted it, then I would prepare to level the frets. And then I would get on and level the frets. Let's just see if we can get this all wrapped onto here. It's a very small amount of gripping space, but we may just be able to do it if I can just bend that 90 degrees right now. Yeah, just about. I think we could probably get away with it. Right, I think these slots could also do with a tiny adjustment. But what I'm going to do, while I've got this sitting there, I'm going to lift this off to one side. Like I say, a tiny bit of more, tiny little bit more of the slots to do, but it's very, very small amount. So I'm going to take care of this major stuff first, and then we'll get back to the sort of tiny details of the slots. It's only now about 1/10 of a mil, if that I would reduce them any further. So what I'm doing now is I'm kind of lining up by marking the frets ready for the precision leveling. And this is one of the things I discovered early on, very quickly actually, doing any setup work, was I would say about 95% of electric guitars, acoustic guitars, no, electric guitars, let's say, need fretwork in order for them to play at the sort of playing actions that we typically like, which is usually low and light. Not many people come to me ask for a high action. So the thing that normally prevents us from having a low playing action is the uneven frets. So most guitars we ever see start out being set to whatever action that they can hide the uneven frets. Yeah, mostly set to an action which disguises or masks the uneven frets. Now the question is, why do guitars have uneven frets? And I used to think it was because the frets were perhaps not installed properly, or if they were low, somebody had banged the frets too hard. If they were sticking up, maybe somebody hadn't banged them down hard enough, or there was perhaps some grime or grit or something in the nut slot, which is inside fret slot, which is possible. But actually, over the years, I've discovered that that's not really what happens most of the time. What happens most of the time is that while there are some frets that don't get pressed in properly, and there are also some frets that maybe get hammered in too much, the majority of the unevenness of frets comes from what happens to the neck when you load the strings up to pitch, tune them up to pitch. And it seems that the load of these strings, the loading, puts a pressure end to end on this guitar, and what happens is the neck actually crumples or bunches up under pressure, under that compression, I should call it, longitudinal compression. So it's really interesting. The neck curves, so it can't literally pull into the bridge, but it's trying to pull end to end. So the neck curves a little bit, and when it can't curve anymore, it not only does it curve, but it sort of wrinkles a little bit. And that wrinkling or bunching, funnily enough, is enough to cause the frets to be uneven. Enough to get in the way of you playing with a low action without chokes and buzzes. So that's what I discovered, and this method of leveling that I use just so happens to be really good at addressing that, because unlike conventional methods which take the strings off and make the neck lie flat and unstressed because there's no strings, so you flatten the neck out and leave it horizontal, that's okay for leveling frets on a neck that's laid out horizontal, but it doesn't. I mean, you can get a nice level set of frets, but then what happens is you load strings onto it, and it's suddenly under compression, and the frets then suddenly behave differently to when there were no strings on. So you've got this bunching reintroduced that wasn't there when you leveled, and so you've leveled for a perfectly flat neck, and now you've got a compressed neck with bunching, and suddenly those nice level fret tops are no longer level and they're sticking up. So this method is great because it does it with the neck slightly curved and under compression. So what I'm now doing is I'm taking any high spots or finding out any low spots that I have to worry about on this whole fretboard using this bar, which is tuned or calibrated to the actual overall curve of this neck, but not, it doesn't really, the leveling beam kind of ignores the bunched part of it. It just cares about the overall shape, and it approximates that shape because I use the 3 brass nuts to take a 3-point sample of the overall neck. So it says, tell me roughly across these 3 sample points how curved this neck is, and then mimic it on the beam. The beam does that, but it does it in a more linear and smooth fashion. Okay, now that happens to be, in real money, very low. We are currently, we are just on 1.25 on the last fret, which is my target low action. So it's pretty good. I'm going to do a tiny bit more. The amount of leveling I've already done now on this is minimal. I barely touched it. So now I'm just going to run back, and I'm kind of not really doing much in the way of pressing down. I'm just using gravity, and I'm working slightly side to side and back and forwards within what I call the E track, which is the space either side and including the place where the E string sits. So I'm just sort of moving backwards and forwards, and actually I can see that all the frets are touched with the cutting paper, which is 400 grit, by the way, on there. So that tells me they're all generally quite good, and now we're getting them very precisely leveled, which means we can have a very low action and you can bend notes without them buzzing or choking. So I'm going to use the same calibration on the B track now. So I've just moved across to the B track without making any adjustments to the beam, or the banana as I call it, because it's slightly curved. So this method of leveling frets with the neck both relieved, i.e. curved, and under compression, therefore bunched, if you like, is more accurate than the traditional method. It also is it preserves better the fret metal, because as you can tell, I can keep dropping the strings back into place, and I can play the string in its track. Now hear this, we're going over, pushing the E over into the G track, and it's choking out right there. So that's to this side of the G track. So watch that, I've forgotten what number fret it was, but it was choking out. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to calibrate for the G track, which can change as we come across the radius. So we're calibrating for the G. So I tend to do that side of the G. It's only a habit of mine. I can't do it directly on top. I have to do it where the string isn't. And that's a little bit over relieved now on the beam. So I'm just going to tweak the grip there, and I can feel that's spot on. So that's now copied the shape, the overall shape of this neck. Pull the string out the way, both ends. And now I'm going to do the G track, and it's the G track now that's going to clear up that chugged bend. What you tend to find is when you're coming across, leveling across the radius this way, you tend to find that we move from leveling out individual or problematic high and low frets to curing or alleviating what I call fret slap, which is really, it's just a fret buzz, but I call it something different because it's usually caused by the thicker strings spinning more as they do, and hitting the little peaks of the hills. Okay, so we're choking out there, so that, let's make a note of that. That's the 16th fret, and we're choking out on the 17th fret on this G, right? 17th fret, bending the high E on the 16th, choking out on the G track on the 17th fret. So if I go up, I'm still on the, staying on the G track. If I now go up to the end of the G track, and I know it's bending out on the 15th, 17th, and I'm going to put focus, I call it, a little bit on this end, and I'm going to do a little bit pressing down, knowing that I've got to just eke out a little space up here for that bend at that low action. Of course, the thing about actions and bends is if you want to raise the action, of course, you don't have to worry about the levelness of the frets. It's a give and a take thing. They're all interrelated, these different settings, but if you want a low action, there you go. Now where's that? Now there's what I think is a dip there. So that's not touching anything here. That'll be touching out on the G on the 17th. G on the 17th again. I'll just do a little bit more at that end, and if I don't eke it out, then I'm not too worried, because basically we're starting at a very low action anyway, so it's quite a challenging action to get all the bends out on, but that's the aim of it. And I can see there's a low spot here at the just after the 15th, so a low spot that we might be dropping into when we come to do that bend, or as we bend across. So there's an interesting geometry as we bend so the 15th. Okay, so we are in a ditch. We're in a little hole here, a little down spot, and on the 16th. So we're just choking out on the 17th fret on the G still. Pretty good. I'll give the G track one last go, and then we'll move on and reconsider. It's a judgment call, this, how much time or how much do I stay on one spot, when is too much, when is too long, how much metal is too much, and there's no set answer. So the problem with a low fret, if you find yourself fretting a note in a ditch, as it were, you're having to, the string is coming up out of that ditch, and it tends to hit what could be a regularly heighted fret. It doesn't have to necessarily be a flat fret, but it comes out of that ditch and you've lost some height in that ditch. Consequently, it touches out on a regular fret that isn't even particularly high somewhere afterwards. And if you want to retrieve that note, you have to level everything around in your endeavour. Just got it. It's not bad. So you can see that, you can hear that freeing itself up. So we now move on to the what I would call the D track. So that's the impact of low frets, or a low group of frets in what I call a valley, is that you have to play down into, you're fretting down into that dip, and that, as I say, that makes the following frets effectively high, when in fact they might just be regular height compared to everything else, but it makes them effectively high. And the only way you're going to get them out of the way of your fretted note, so it doesn't buzz or risk choking, is to bring the higher areas either side of the valley down, so that the overall difference between the bottom of the valley and the top of the hills either side is reduced. You just have to bring down and reduce that overall difference. Now, like I said, of course, if you don't want to do that, or if you don't have enough fret metal, or you think it might be too costly in fret metal, of course, the other way you go about it is to increase your playing action, and a surprisingly small amount of increase in playing action will fix the problem. But I like to go for the go for reducing or ironing it out with fret leveling first, knowing from experience when I want to stop. And I can see the low spot here is costing a bit of fret metal on these final 3 frets up here, but that's not really a problem because you're not actually often playing right up on those last couple of frets anyway. And the amount I'm taking off isn't critical. It's not a showstopper. Now we've got showing up as quite a big dip here on this side of the radius, so it's taken me a little while to calibrate. Now that's now over calibrated. It'll take me a little longer to calibrate that tool, and you're probably guessing that what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get all 3 of these points touching down at the same time, and that's a feel thing. I can't really describe how that works, but when they all touch down, I've got the beam approximating the curve of the neck, and you can somehow, after thousands of these, you can feel it when it's dead on the calibration, which is great. So now, as I said, when you get down to the wound strings that are thicker and heavier, different construction and heavier gauge, those, because they spin further, for any given action, those strings will tend to clatter and hit the tops of these hills quicker, and you'll get what I call fret slap, which, unlike a thing we normally know as fret buzz, fret slap tends to accompany a whole series of notes. A little bit up here, but it's actually not bad now. Yeah, so fret slap is a kind of buzz. Is a kind of buzz all over the guitar neck, which is all over the guitar neck. Or I think what characterises what I call fret slap is the kind of buzz that you find accompanying, or on a series of notes over, could be as much as half the fretboard. In other words, it's characterised by being present on a large number of fretted notes. Kind of more familiar fret buzz up on the higher strings tends to be located in a single place, so it might be one fret that's high. That's pretty good. Now I'm going to calibrate for the low E, and once I've done this, I will take off the strings, throw them away, and we will recrown these frets. Then we will sand and polish them out, and after sanding and polishing them out, then we'll take everything apart and clean everything up, so this thing will look pretty nice and new when Ian gets it back. And a bit more shaping of the nut and reduction of the slots on these nut slots, just to get down to the perfect first fret action. The thicker string slots are actually quite labour intensive to cut. You have to work them quite hard for quite a while to cut them down to where you want them to be, so it's not an easy process. It can take me up to an hour, sometimes more if I make mistakes, an hour to make a custom nut. But despite Graphtech making thousands of individual types of nut to supposedly suit loads of types of models of guitars out there, it's actually quite common not to find the one you need. So there's what I call slap at that end, that little that accompanies the actually it's a little bit low as well, so it's kind of not surprising. So I'm just going to, before I sacrifice any more fret metal, I'm just going to double check the action on here. That should be 1.5, which is my target. So there's no point leveling away and costing myself, or costing Ian fret metal if I'm under my target action, because that's just making an impossible challenge really. So we just want to get this right. Okay, that's pretty good. Yeah, it's quite high at this end. I need to take care of that nut height. Okay, that's good. So while I'm here, we've got to do it sometime. Let's get rid of the, well, let's take care of that last bit of nut action, nut height. So let's zoom you in for a surgical view, something like that. And remember to keep everything in the right place. Let's just check everything through. So I'm moving off the strings out the way while I start on the G, and I'll get my feeler gauge. I'll start with a G in place because these could break at any moment now. G in place. Now we're looking for, it's actually a fair bit higher than I go to normally, but that's okay. So I take the 17 and I just give it a little bit of extra. So I can see the gap underneath there. It's actually quite difficult to do. If it comes a point where for some reason the slot gets quite shiny, even with tusk, and especially if it's a long slot like this, you can try and kind of cut it backwards a bit more, give yourself a chance to cut the top right. So I think that, so I can still see fresh air under there. What are we on here? We're on 0.3 mils, which is my typical target. Okay, I think that will do. Now we go to the B. Again, don't break until I got you done, please. That's quite a lot higher, actually. So here comes the B. B, almost there. Let's have a look visually. Looks pretty good. Yep, that'll do me. There's old high E, which is a bit mucky, as well as still being a bit high. It's not too bad actually. Just do a tiny bit there. Leave it there. So now I'm going to take off the bottom two, and then we'll just check the D, which I think is probably quite close. D, 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 D. Good. A. Got a gap. A being this one, and this is quite a lot thicker. Now what you can do is get some pencil in there so you can see what you're cutting and what you haven't. This gives it a bit of a shine, so I can cut backwards here and I can see where the blade, whatever it is, the serrated bit is cutting to. I can see when I haven't touched the front edge, and then when I have, like that. That'll do. And finally this one, which is the highest one of all. So let's put a bit of pencil in there for a good view. I get the full size one here. There we go. So downwards, give us a chance of cutting backwards so we can cut down. So backwards, and now a bit of downwards. Hard to do. A little over. So sometimes I think that I ought to get a thinner one and start with this one and cut a little bit with this one before I try and cut with the full size one. So give us a little bit of a downhill here like so, and then go in with a slightly bigger one, and then finally to the full size one. So this one, just to make sure we've got it to the right width. And coming towards the front edge, the little shiny bit's getting smaller and smaller. Yay. So this one's probably exactly right now. That one, the low E now is perfect, and the A is a little bit higher. Oops, I've moved you, sorry. Back in there. Huh? So let's just go a bit more with this one. It's so difficult to get a clean cut when you're dealing with the thicker strings. Just on the mark. Get in there, get in there. Righty-ho. So that's all of that done in great detail. So, not quick at all. Fine. Okay, great. Let's move things along a bit now. Just undo these strings. Get rid of them. Ow. So, recrown, a bit more reshaping of the nut, just to soften it off and take away some of the excess material here. We don't need the strings down in a big ditch. They're at the correct height. We just need to get rid of the excess material above them, which isn't needed. So we should do a bit more filing, lose that, and then clean everything. The sanding and polishing part I'll do off camera because it takes about half an hour and it's boring and messy and noisy. And let's just cut these off so I can pull the strings out. Should be fairly easily. Come along. So the precision part of leveling the frets is done. This is a bit sticky. Yeah, the precision part of leveling the frets is done. So in a way, the precision part of the setup is done because I've chosen the target action and I've made the frets play at that action. So yeah, it's kind of ready, just ready to go now. We're just going to be tidying up cosmetically and checking over the electrics and cleaning those up as well if we can. Now it's a little bit difficult because I haven't taken the back off, which I'll need to do, the back plate, but I'll do that when we come to put new strings on, I think. So there go the old sacrificial strings. My hands are now filthy. Let's now quickly go into the crowning process. So get that out of the way. He's done his job. Crowning, I use the fret crowning file and a wire brush for cleaning out any clogging. And to crown it, I just basically mark up the frets again. And this is going to just be a helpful guide to show me that I'm crowning the file the fret properly, and yeah, leaving the tops at the exact same height that we just leveled it to, because that's what we just spent quality time doing. So what I do is I run the file along the top. There's almost nothing needed doing there. Tiny little bit here on the bass strings. That's enough. Move on. A bit more on this fret. Both sides of the radius, but again, fairly quick. So what I'm doing with this file, it's a concave file, and it's allowing me to rub off any flat edges that the leveling process has put onto the frets, and the concave shape of it helps do that. You can do it with a three-sided regular file as well, but this is a sort of quicker and easier way. Obviously the file costs a bit to buy. I think it's about £150 it used to be, or some 120, or maybe it's even less now, but it was fairly pricey when I bought it about 10 years ago, but it's done work every day since, so I really can't fault the value for money. Really long-lasting tool. So I'm just going over, some of the frets have slightly flatter parts than others depending on where I had to concentrate on kind of alleviating some fret slap, but by and large it's not really feeling like it's too much any one spot, which is good because these frets aren't exactly a mild tool to begin with, and of course the leveling process always costs you, there's no way around it, it costs you a little bit of fret metal. That's it's just the physics of the thing, and as I said along the way, part of the skill is having the judgment to know when something is too much and when it isn't. Okay, so that's the frets recrowned, and in order to polish them out, I will mask off the fingerboard completely and then do that, but I'll do that off camera in a minute because it's boring. What I will do now is just the last bit of shaping of the nut as we're here. A fairly good zoom, come on, thank you, give me bright view, thank you. So anywhere where there's material over and above the height of the string, we don't need it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a softer edge on this thing by rolling it over like so. That makes this edge softer, and then we'll do something similar over here. And that again eases off any chance of scratching, rubbing, being sharp against the hand. That's nice. Right, so we've still got more material here than we need, so I'm just going to kind of work away at it, and the trick is to just take it down until your string can sit in there without any well, without moving. Obviously it's got to be deep enough to hold the string, but we don't want it so deep that the string is down in the bottom of a sort of trench that's going to risk grabbing hold of it. So as long as it can seat the string and the string isn't going to risk moving, or there's no chance of the string moving, then really we're in good shape. So that's not too bad. Again, it's still, if we were to put a blade in there, we'd still see that it's actually quite deep in that gap. So, you know, we can always take some more. What you end up with, by the way, is for a low action, you end up, or when you have a low action, you actually end up with an incredibly low nut as well. It's surprising how little material you should have above your string. And of course, all factory nuts have far too much material above the nut material above the string, and so consequently they're always way too tall by miles and bulky. But they only need to be a relatively flat thing. So this is kind of it's not polished or anything. I'm just, you know, if you fancy polishing it a little bit, you get a lighter gauge piece of paper and give it a bit of a go with that to smooth things off a bit. And that's pretty good. You can go the whole hog and keep doing it until it's polished out and shiny, if that's the sort of thing you like. Okay, so just as a quick look, there's a few things I want to take a closer look at here before I go off into the boring stuff. So one of them is, let's get this out of the way. Where's that? Yeah, one of the things I want to do is I want to sort of check the tuners, but also want to have if I want to clean this headstock, for example, it would make sense that the tuners are off. Some of them are already loose. Taking the tuners off, it can be a quick procedure, but the satisfying part is you can give the headstock a really good clean while you're at it. And let's just take this tremolo arm out for a second so we can turn over. Yeah, as long as you can get the tuners out fairly straightforwardly, you can give it a really good clean. Now, this is a bit fiddly in that there's some screws here, but they're not the end of the world. So I tend to want to take them out, and I can just get a look at the tuners. I'll put them down in a sort of particular order, which I can then put them back in the same order. These have ugly bits of cellophane on the back of the tuner bodies, which I always like to take off because I just think they're a bit ugly. And it's like having the plastic on your car seats. But actually, if you're going to clean a guitar, taking the tuners off, it's the only way you're going to get a good proper clean of the headstock, because you can't get in and out of the tuners really thoroughly. So it's just how many minutes, a few extra minutes really, just to take everything out of the way. 1, 2 and 3. Put the correct end onto the electric screwdriver, it could be even quicker, but there's a lot of grime on here, so it will come up nice and clean. This says it appears to say it's a 2007 guitar, so we're 18 years or something old, so it's probably not had a good clean up in its time in all those years. 18 years of grime. So my hands are filthy. I'm going to have a good scrub in a minute, but while I'm still handling them, I might as well leave them grubby. So just give you a look. There we have it. A cloth is always a good thing at this point. That's good, not a particularly new one. So we just give it a sort of rub down first of all on both sides, and then we can get some cleaning solutions on it. So I use naphtha, which is over here. give it a good quick clean down. Now I'm probably going to do some more cleaning down, but I thought I'd just do the headstock first and then I can put the tuners back on. I won't clean the fingerboard yet until I've done the fret polishing, only because it'll get grubby again. So the finish has faded a little bit, it's sort of bleached out a little bit here, so we can't do anything about that, but I just really want it to be clean more than anything else at this stage. So I'm going to take all the historical grime off the wood here and then run down here, sort of mostly avoiding the numbers on the side just for now. Right, so I'll come back to that naphtha a bit later. So let's just see, where are we? Oh yes. So like I said, these tuners have this little plastic cover on, which is quite grim. When you take it off, you're left with a little bit of residual sticky stuff, which takes a little moment of cleaning off to get off. But you know, again, it gives me a chance to handle the tuner, clean it up a little bit, test it out, put it back in, and then we'll do the screw up on the other side when that's done. So it's just a bit of an overall spring cleaner, isn't it? You know, I mean, this little paper wrapper was a sort of factory courtesy thing to keep the thing looking new and clean, just like your car seat plastics might have done. But let's think now it's its new birthday, so we can take all of those off and give it a fresh start. So I'm just doing those sort of finger tight as I put them back on. And then one of the thing that takes up probably most time on this is going to be the masking off the fretboard and cutting new pieces of masking tape to do that. So we have to cut a whole set of different lengths, but I'll do all that off camera because it's dreary. And there are a million other videos that I've done where it shows me doing it when I can't be bored to switch off the camera. Yes, so what I'll do is I will clean this off, put these back on, and I think what I'll do then is clean the surface down there on the scratch plate, and then we'll take the scratch plate up and just physically check the components to make sure there's nothing adrift, and then we'll give it some spray. I think the spray will probably be all it needs, and we'll go on that basis. But if it's still a problem, or if there's an intermittent fault afterwards when we've done, then I think we'll be able to test before I put the new strings on, and then if it's a problem still, then we'll switch, we'll find another switch and replace it. It'll be the cheapest sort of 5-way Strat type switch that you can get, which I've probably got a few spares used, but perfectly good. Okay, last bit of scrubbing. So what are we on? The 5th of May. So now we've got poor old President Putin not sure whether his ridiculous victory over fascism parade in Moscow is going to be attacked by Ukrainian drones or not. I've got a feeling not. I kind of feel probably because there's too many civilian type people amongst all of the military people, but technically as a military target it's entirely valid, since those same people are expected to go to Ukraine and kill Ukrainians. So I think that's a perfectly valid place to strike an enemy who's attacking you, but that's just my point of view. It's a bit of a there's a kind of inevitability. You know, I know there's people who genuinely think that if a country talks about defending itself by military means, like Ukraine is doing, I know that some people think that desire to defend is a kind of warmongering, and I've heard that position levied on people who want Europeans to, or want Americans to, or were happy when America was supplying information and military support to Ukraine. And so there's a kind of position where, and I see it in little vox pops in the street, where people say, you know, war is terrible, and it's just terrible for both sides, and it should just be stopped, and it's all the leaders' faults. And while that is a simple childlike analysis, that may be very well true, it doesn't help the situation when one of the people was invaded by another and has a choice to either defend themselves or to die, or be certainly enslaved or subjugated, something like that. But a lot of them die and suffer at the hands of the invader. So, you know, the idea that you can look at it in the abstract and go, oh, isn't it terrible that in wars all men suffer and it's always the leaders who send them to war? Well, yes, there's truth in that, but it's disembodied. It's pulled, you know, taken, decontextualized. It doesn't really make any day-to-day sense when the person, one of the sides who's fighting, didn't really have a choice. One of them, well, did, yeah, but the choice isn't a real choice. It's a choice to capitulate and lie down and beg for mercy and hope that someone doesn't slaughter you. Now, I don't think when it comes to your doorstep, I don't think you would think that was a choice, even if partly feels like it's a choice now. I don't think it's a real choice. You wouldn't expect that for yourself or your loved ones. So I don't think there's a choice in that, and I don't think the analogy of, or the truism that war is terrible and everybody suffers and it's always the leaders. Well, actually, it's not the leaders in Ukraine's case. It's the Ukrainians who don't want their daughters and mothers and sons and fathers to be hurt. You know, those people choose then to fight and take up arms against the invader. So it's not that kind of platitude, I have to say, it doesn't really make any sense at all. I'm going to pull up these nuts. These pots, because they've knobs, because they've got cellophane paper underneath them, which is not helping things. Anyway, so you know, the thing that many, I was going to say young people, but maybe not just young people, many observers seem to miss is that when somebody is coming for you and they're coming with AK-47s and shells and cluster munitions and phosphor shells and so on to kill you and burn you and whatever, you're if you think about it, all you're facing is being killed. You don't really, it doesn't, it's a sort of, it's academic to you whether that is how they're trying to kill you. The fact is they're trying to kill you, and you have to do whatever you can to not be killed. One of the ways that's going to give you some chance is to fight back, and one of the ways to give you no chance is to not fight back or defend yourself. So they have to defend themselves as you would at a push, given the, no matter what your politics currently are, you would have to, if it came to it, you'd either lie down in the path of the oncoming attacker and go, my morality doesn't let me fight, so chop my head off and rape my mother. Or you would do, I suspect, like the majority of people do, and that is you would fight back if you could, with the hope of liberating your people you love and the country you love and the values you care about. So, you know, I get it that a lot of Western people are frightened of Putin's nuclear threats. I mean, you know, you'd be mad not to be. But, and some people wonder why, some people talk about the Ukrainians as if they think they're being cavalier or unduly risk-taking. But you've got to remember, like I said, that for the Ukrainians, you're facing death. And frankly, you don't care whether death by a bullet is no nicer for you than death by a mushroom cloud. And anyone who thinks you have a particular preference of one over the other is fooling themselves. It's naive and actually completely empathetic. You know, you've got no idea that these people are facing death, and therefore, why would it matter to them that fighting back might bring a nuclear strike from Russia? Why would a Ukrainian who's about to be killed by a gun or a knife care that the Russian leader got angry and instead fired a nuclear weapon at Ukraine? Death is death, you know, and they don't want to die, and doesn't matter which way they do, really, or, you know, they don't have the same fear if they're already being threatened. So I don't think they are being careless. I think they are facing death in a way that most of the Western observers aren't, and would laugh at the suggestion that they should be bothered that their resistance, or anyone's resistance, might cause the Russians to reach for a nuclear weapon. If the Russians are going to do that, they're going to do it anyway. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out this plate so I can get access to the switch underneath. You can try and shoot through here, but it's never really that good. It's much better to get under here. Now, if necessary, if we can't get this, I think we should be able to get the plate off. Sometimes there's an overhang and you can't get it off. But if you can't get it off, you can take the neck off, and then you get easier access. But we should be able to take this off and lift everything up and get in to the pots and the switch with some contact cleaner. So yeah, the point I was going to get to is, you know, I know that the West's greatest fear is, but what if we or the Ukrainians defeat Russia? They keep saying that if they feel they've reached the existential end, you know, and of course in an angry mad person's mind that could be judged to be at any time. So all they're saying is, if it gets bad enough for us, we will use our nukes, we will, so don't fight us. And you have to say to yourself, are you going to give in to that threat and do nothing to protect yourself, because that man who's trying to kill you is threatening that if you don't let him kill you, he will nuke the world and take everyone with him? Well, that's not a nice prospect, but that man who's saying that right there is going to say it and do it anyway, almost regardless of what we try and do to please or appease or whatever, you know. So I don't know, I personally, this thing doesn't quite fit this one, but I'm trying to make it work. Yeah, I not really. I think that the end game, unfortunately, is going to have to be that we take sort of an action against Russia, which risks them stamping their feet and responding with a nuclear response if they're angry and destructive enough. And the truth is that we have no control over that, and we never did. So any sort of thought that we did is we're deluding ourselves. So we are at the mercy of a madman with a super destructive weapons. We always were at the risk of that kind of person. And, you know, like I said, the only really option we've got is either we avoid challenging him at any point because we're frightened of his instability and the possibility of him, sorry about this view, it's terrible, possibility of him, you know, doing this insane thing and firing off a nuclear weapon, or we just worry about that forever and never stand up for the lives of our neighbours, or you know, maybe even, you know, the idea, I guess, is that Trump, actually let me mix them up. The idea that Putin works to is that he wants us so afraid of his nuclear response that we wouldn't protect ourselves if he came for us. You know, and loads of people I know would go, don't be ridiculous if you think that Russia's... You wait and see. He will be into Moldova next, or Lithuania, or one of those, and it'll just be one more. And if, you know, what's guaranteed is that he will absolutely guaranteed do one more if he knows that his threat of nuclear response has done the job and effectively made people too afraid to take a stand. So I have a feeling that it's unpalatable, but I have a feeling that the end game, as history has told us, is going to go only really one way, and that is there will be a point at which we have to have a confrontation which either persuades the aggressor via arms not to do this, or if they want to play annihilation games and say, well, no, we're not going to do what you tell us, we're going to carry on invading, or else we're going to throw our bombs, then there's going to come a time where that person throws their bombs, whatever happens. And they're more likely to threaten them, the more afraid we are that they'll use them. Of course, the more likely they're going to threaten them and carry on taking territories because they know that we're too afraid. My concern right now, I have to say, is that now that Trump's pretty much destroyed NATO, the next logical step that Putin will take will be to test NATO's combined stomach. And the way to do that will be to invade a small NATO country and see whether an Article 5 response comes in any shape or form. And I suspect it won't, or I suspect that will be the default position that the USA will not want to be in any way hold to any NATO type obligations, responsibilities. In which case, all that happens is that Russia takes more territory and knows that it can take more still. So, anyway, that's just a little where my brains are, and I'm sorry those people who aren't interested in politics. It's just real life. Now, one of the things you can do with a guitar like this, especially if you've got it, maybe you've got it from someone else, a quick way to clean it up is to take a very sharp bladed knife and kind of run it over the fingerboard, fret to fret, and that will sort of pick up all its organic crud from the last 20 years, and you can see it's, I'm going to flip it all onto the floor because it's sort of nuclear biological NBC, yeah, so there's a lot of accrued built up grime, and this is a sort of quick way of removing it without having to scrub for hours. So you can see it's also a sort of produces a lot of dust grime, which you want to be somewhere where you can either brush it onto the floor and vacuum it up later, which is what I tend to do, or get it vacuumed up there and then. So I'm just jumping between and whizzing between the frets just to get rid of the grime. So I suppose going back to the thing where Ukraine would be entitled to strike at somebody, an aggressor country's, an invader country's military parade. It'd be absurd. Just as it's absurd to hear Russia claim that that it's outrageous that the Ukraine has bombed or a drone struck somewhere inside Russia. Like, you've been doing that to their civilians and cities for 3 years. How come it's okay for you? And of course, there's no point getting into that logic or reasoning because there is no reasoning and logic involved. But it's just, to a sane person, that bleating complaint just looks utterly mental. Wait a minute, you're invading Ukraine, and you've got all your kind of pat arguments that you're convinced your people with, and then you expect them not to look ridiculous to us who don't follow that same Kool-Aid logic. Well, sorry mate, you've declared war, or you've by action you've declared war on a sovereign country. They're entitled to fight you back where and however they like. And the idea that you think, well, of course, the reason Russia goes through that whole bleating, oh look, these barbarians, these terrorist Ukrainian regime has struck at the peaceful city of Moscow, isn't that outrageous? The reason they do that is because they know it'll find purchase in the useful idiots in the West, a certain group of people who will immediately go, yeah, that's really like terrorism. Why should they strike at a city? Like, what have the ordinary Russians got to do? Blah, blah, blah. So, and yet to other people like me, it doesn't look, there's absolutely nothing illogical about striking the capital city of the country that's invaded you and slaughtered a load of your people. It's just completely insane that, and it's this. They only say it because there is a willing audience for it, and part of the audience is, of course, their own Z patriot type people who have already swallowed Putin's kind of narrative. But also, as I say, it's because there's a ready audience in the West for it, which Putin knows well there is, and he's playing to that as well, that audience. Yeah, you can't strike back, but we can hit you anywhere and any time, but you can't hit us back. Got it? Does that make sense? Nope. I didn't think so. Not to sane people. Right, I'm going to do the polishing bit, and then I'm going to come back ready to put new strings on and test the electrics. See you shortly. iPhone run out as usual. You have to take over. Okay, done. Frets sanded, crown sanded, polished, everything cleaned up, lovely. I'm just going to do a couple of quick things. You can see, you zoomed out, you can see, right. We're going to put oil on here, but we're also going to just take off the back plate for a minute so that we can make adjustments to the tremolo strength, because we want it set to down only, which means we need to just take care to lighten up the amount of pull countering the strings. So we'll just get it loaded up and then we'll have access to those springs to make that adjustment. So okie dokie. pulled all the way in at the moment, which is okay. Right, so what we'll do is we'll get the rosewood oil thing, fingerboard oil. This is a new can, a new pot, and we just give it a feed. And once we've done this, we'll put up some new strings. We've got Dario, sorry, Ernie Ball 10s, the 46s, and we'll get those on and stretched out, and then we'll check the intonation and the tremolo setting, and then we'll be done. And I think, as I said to Ian when I met him the other day, he'll be amazed that the difference in feel of this action will be a million miles away from what it was before. You know, and that's the whole point. If you're going to have a setup, you absolutely got to be able to feel the difference. There can't be any sort of half and half going on. Okay, let's get this open. I seem to have blunted the new blade. Thank you. Better. So I've just heard the most incredible bit of media news reported by a source that I follow and trust. Apparently, in a conversation today, Donald Trump stated that his kind of, I don't know what the word would be, his bottom line now is that Russia has to give up all of Ukraine. So, and he actually said it, and it's not AI and it's not deep state. It's a genuine interview, and he's either gone mad or he's turned complete 190 million degrees. Who knows? It would be one of the most astonishing turnarounds. And then anything is possible with this gentleman. Weird as weird can be. Come on out of there. Can't get caught and buckled under there, please. Silly thing. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to put on the strings, and we're going to do it in such a way that we get the least amount of whatever that stuff is called, slack on there. So here's how I do it. Get my tunery winder on thing, and I get all my tuner posts in line so I can push the strings straight through. And once they're all in line, I start with the low E, go all the way through, make sure it's up inside the block, and then pull it tight, and then I hold on to the string at the first fret, and I pull it back a fret's worth, and I start winding it, and I hold on to the held string, and I let the loose string go under the held string on the first time round. And then I grab hold of the loose string and yank it up, and I direct the held string under the loose string the second time. And that then locks it off in a nice little sort of loop. And same again here, all the way through. Make sure the ball is right up, pull back a fret, wind on, hold the held one over the loose one. As the loose one comes around, push the held one under and bring the loose one, yank it up so it's out of the way, and let the held one go underneath the exit point of the loose one. And that gives us a sort of minimum amount of wrap. It's got to be on the high strings, the plain strings, it's got to be that whole fret's worth. If you go any less, then you run the risk of the string being able to slip. G, up, back, wind. Up, that started running away. Hold on, back in place, over, under. Go round. Now this has gone round a little bit extra because I lost the grip of it there and ended up winding on a bit more than I wanted. But that's okay. Better more than less on the wound strings, sorry, on the plain strings. Okay, so nearly there. And here we go. Get in there. Back a fret. Okay, there's all my spare, and I'll just cut all that back nice and flush so we don't have any getting in the way and hurting our fingers. Lovely. Like that. All lovely and tidy. So if you remember, I said that I was talking about how important the whatchamacallits are. I was talking about how important the nut was to tuning stability. Well, the nut, you can consider it half, oops, oh no. Oh, okay. I've pulled off your numbers in my masking process. The stuff is stuck to them. My mistake. Oops. See if I can make up some homemade stickers with numbers on them. Oh, yeah, the masking tape stuck to the damn things. Sorry. So I'm just giving everything a sort of stretch. While I'm at it, let me put back on the this thing, truss rod cover, since I already made my necessary adjustments. So we'll just do this back up. Oh, sorry about the numbers. That's dopey. I should have realised that was going to mess with them. Right, so there I am. Now I'm going to get everything tuned up to pitch. So yeah, the importance of the importance of the nut in keeping the guitar playing and staying in tune is great. I think of it as about half the deal. The other half of tuning stability is stretching out the slack in your strings, which is what I do now at this stage in the process. And I do it with thumb and forefinger. So I grip the string and push and pull and push with thumb and forefinger against each other. And that takes out a lot of the slack in the strings. Now, recently I've been fitting for a customer who supplied them some XL, NYXL D'Addario strings. They're kind of expensive, like Elixir price, But one of the things that struck me, they seem pretty good strings, but the thing that struck me most is that I only needed to stretch them once and they were all slacked out. So these strings must be part stretched or fully stretched out before packing, which is quite something. I don't know how they do it, but that's what happened. So it might be worth investigating. Lovely, lovely. One more stretch. Thumb and four fingers. So remember, tuning stability has everything to do with 50% is the nut. So that means getting the right material, friction free. The slots have to be cut right, and the first fret action needs to be low, as you'll see it is on this guitar now. The low first fret action, not only does it feel lighter and easier and less tiring to play because you're not pressing down so hard down at that end, but it also stops the notes fretted down there from going slightly sharp, which they tend to do if you don't have a low action. So that sorts it out. So 50% of the tuning stability is in your nut. %, is in the string stretching. Now we've got a tremolo to check up on, and at the moment the tremolo is set really tight, so it can't really use it in any direction down. We don't want it floating, completely floating, but what we do want is for it to press down with a relatively small amount of effort, and that means we're going to back off these tremolo claw screws until the tremolo moves fairly effortlessly away from its position of lying flat on the top. So at the moment it's flat on the top still, and we're just going to keep backing the screws out until we can get it to move down, or if you want to, just keep backing out until the back of that tremolo block plate, the bridge plate, starts to lift, and then we come forward again until it's down. Still, it's getting closer. So we want it to stay down most of the time, unless we grab the arm and give it a little shimmy downwards, which is what as much as most people need. Starting to just about think of moving. I don't like these screw-in arms myself. I'm just making sure that the tremolo doesn't lift off when I bend notes hard in one direction, because if you're too loose, when you bend notes, the tremolo can lift up and other notes will go out of tune, or other unfretted notes will go out of tune, or can go out of tune. I'm just going to check something out here. That's not the easiest angle to get in. That's a little bit too far down. Let's see. Now we changed tuning very slightly there, so we expect it to move a little bit because the bridge plate has just risen a tiny bit off the top. Fine, fine, fine. That's good. Everything is just about done. Let's just have a quick check of where we are. Okay, we are just over the 150, which is pretty good, and dead on the 125. So if you have that slightly out of the way. Now what we'll just check now is the intonation. So for that we'll need guitar cable and a tuner, which we'll use the trusty old Korg, of which I've got two, one for playing when I go out with friends or at home, and the other one for here. One, two, three. Too long. Too long, yeah, it's fractionally too long. Let's move this one. So you typically find that the D will sit slightly forward of the G when all's well. So that's a standard spread. And if it isn't, you need to sort of get everything back. It's a very dependable little set of staggered positions. Hey, intonation set, very good. Next thing, last thing to do now, we take out the arm for a second, turn them upside down, and we'll put the plate on the back. We'll move this little earth wire back under there so it's not in the way. So that's all good. So we're done. So thank you for watching. Get home with this, and tomorrow's actually tomorrow we've got set up. No, I think we might be doing some spraying tomorrow, doing some stain test tonight on some maple. No, yes, maple, and then maybe tomorrow we'll stain and spray Nick's neck number 4. How about that? And we'll nearly be done. So everything good, everything done, everything tightened up, everything cleaned. Pots shot with contact cleaner and waggled to make sure they work okay. There we are. Turn my arm back on. Sorry about the numbers. I think I don't know whether it was the cleaning solution that I with a naphtha, softened up the writing, but it's like a thin layer of print, film of print that's come off. Oh. Anyway, so there we have it. Hear that perfect intonation. Beautiful. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. See you again soon. Bye for now.